What if I told you that right now, beneath the surface of global headlines, a confrontation is unfolding that could redefine the balance of power in the Middle East for decades to come? A confrontation involving three of the most powerful and determined actors in global politics: the United States, Israel, and Iran. This is not just another regional tension. This is a layered, decades-long rivalry built on ideology, security fears, nuclear ambition, and strategic dominance. And if it escalates further, the consequences could ripple across oil markets, global alliances, and even nuclear stability worldwide. Stay with me until the end, because today on KIYO Documentary, we are breaking down how this conflict began, why it has intensified, what each side truly wants, and what could happen next. If you value deep, unbiased global analysis that goes beyond the headlines, make sure to subscribe to KIYO Documentary and be part of a community that understands the world before it changes. To understand the present, we must first travel back in time. The hostility between the United States and Iran did not start yesterday. In fact, it can be traced back to the 1979 Iranian Revolution. Before that revolution, Iran was one of America's closest allies in the Middle East. The Shah of Iran maintained strong military and economic ties with Washington. But when the revolution replaced the monarchy with an Islamic republic led by clerical leadership, everything changed. The United States became labeled as a symbol of Western interference, and the hostage crisis at the US Embassy in Tehran cemented decades of mistrust. Since then, sanctions, diplomatic breakdowns, covert operations, and regional proxy conflicts have defined US-Iran relations. Israel's tensions with Iran followed a different but equally intense trajectory. After the revolution, Iran adopted a strong anti-Israel position, refusing to recognize the state and supporting groups that oppose it. Over time, Israel began to view Iran not just as a rhetorical enemy, but as an existential threat, especially as Iran developed advanced missile systems and pursued nuclear technology. Israel's security doctrine is built around preventing hostile powers in the region from acquiring weapons that could threaten its survival. From Israel's perspective, a nuclear-armed Iran would permanently alter the balance of power in the Middle East. For years, this conflict operated in the shadows. Instead of open war, it manifested through proxy battles in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Gaza. Cyber attacks targeted infrastructure. Scientists were assassinated. Military bases were struck without direct acknowledgement. Each side tried to weaken the other without crossing the threshold into full-scale war. But tension has a way of building pressure over time, and eventually pressure demands release. One of the central pillars of this rivalry is Iran's nuclear program. Iran insists its nuclear ambitions are peaceful, aimed at energy production and scientific advancement. The United States and Israel argue that the program has the potential to produce nuclear weapons capability. The 2015 nuclear agreement was an attempt to freeze Iran's nuclear development in exchange for sanction relief. For a brief period, diplomacy created a fragile calm, But when the United States withdrew from the agreement and sanctions returned, the situation began to deteriorate again. Iran gradually reduced its compliance, enriching uranium at higher levels. Israel repeatedly warned that it would not allow Iran to cross what it considers a point of no return. Meanwhile, the broader Middle East was shifting. Regional normalization agreements changed alliances. Some Arab states moved closer to Israel, partly out of shared concerns about Iran's influence. Iran, in response, strengthened its regional partnerships with non-state actors and sympathetic governments. The chessboard became more complex. Every strike in Syria, every missile test, every political speech carried strategic meaning. When direct military exchanges began increasing in frequency, the world took notice. Airstrikes, drone interceptions, and missile barrages raised fears that the shadow war was turning into something more visible and dangerous. The United States, with military assets stationed throughout the region, became directly involved in defensive and retaliatory actions. Each escalation brought new questions. Is this deterrence, or is this the beginning of a larger war? Iran's strategy often relies on asymmetric warfare. Instead of matching Israel or the United States tank for tank or jet for jet, Iran leverages missile capabilities, drone technology, and regional partners to project power. This approach allows Tehran to create pressure on multiple fronts simultaneously. Israel, on the other hand, emphasizes rapid precision strikes, intelligence superiority, and preemptive action. The United States plays a dual role, protecting its interests and allies while trying to avoid a full-scale regional war that could drag in multiple countries. One of the most dangerous flashpoints in this confrontation is the Strait of Hormuz. A significant percentage of the world's oil passes through this narrow waterway. If conflict threatens shipping routes, energy prices can spike overnight. Global markets respond instantly to instability in this corridor. This means that even countries far removed from the Middle East feel the economic consequences of rising tension between the US, Israel, and Iran. Beyond military calculations, ideology plays a powerful role. Iran sees itself as resisting Western dominance and supporting movements it considers oppressed. Israel views itself as defending its right to exist in a hostile environment. The United States frames its involvement around regional stability, counter-terrorism, and nuclear non-proliferation. Each side believes its actions are defensive. Each side believes the other is the aggressor. That psychological dimension makes compromise extraordinarily difficult. Domestic politics also influence decisions. Leaders in all three countries must consider public opinion, national pride, and political survival. In times of crisis, strong responses can rally domestic support. But miscalculation can lead to unintended consequences. History shows that wars sometimes begin not because leaders want total destruction, but because deterrence fails and escalation spirals beyond control. The global response adds another layer of complexity. European nations often push for diplomatic solutions, fearing refugee crises and energy instability. Russia and China monitor the situation carefully, balancing strategic interests and regional influence. The United Nations frequently calls for restraint, but enforcement depends on the willingness of major powers to cooperate. In a multipolar world, consensus is harder to achieve. The technological dimension of this conflict is equally significant. Cyber warfare has become a silent battlefield. Power grids, financial systems, and communication networks can be targeted without a single missile launched. Drone swarms and precision-guided munitions reduce the cost of projecting force. Artificial intelligence enhances surveillance and targeting capabilities. Modern warfare is no longer limited to traditional battlefields. It spans digital infrastructure and space-based assets. There is also the human dimension. Civilians in the region live under the shadow of uncertainty. Air raid sirens, economic sanctions, and political rhetoric shape everyday life. Sanctions impact ordinary citizens through inflation and shortages. Military strikes create displacement and trauma. While geopolitical analysis often focuses on strategy, the human cost remains deeply real. So, what are the possible future scenarios? One possibility is controlled escalation, followed by renewed diplomacy. History shows that even bitter rivals can return to negotiation when costs become too high. Another possibility is prolonged low-intensity conflict with periodic flare-ups, but no decisive resolution. The most dangerous scenario is miscalculation, a strike that causes mass casualties or damages critical infrastructure, triggering a chain reaction of retaliation. Deterrence theory suggests that when each side knows the cost of total war would be catastrophic, restraint can prevail. But deterrence depends on clear communication and rational calculation. In a region crowded with armed actors, misinterpretation is always possible. A missile launched in response to one event can be perceived as preparation for a broader assault. Energy markets, global shipping, and defense industries closely monitor developments. Insurance rates for shipping routes can surge overnight. Stock markets react to headlines. Defense spending increases when threats intensify. Thus, this conflict has both immediate and long-term economic implications far beyond the battlefield. At its core, the US-Israel versus Iran confrontation is about power, security, and influence. It is about who sets the rules in the Middle East. It is about nuclear capability and deterrence credibility. It is about alliances reshaping the regional map. And it is about whether diplomacy can survive in an era of rising mistrust. The question now is not simply who will win. The deeper question is whether escalation benefits anyone. Total war would likely devastate infrastructure, destabilize governments, and shock the global economy. Even limited war carries unpredictable consequences. That is why back-channel diplomacy, intelligence coordination, and strategic signaling continue even amid public hostility. As viewers and global citizens, understanding these dynamics is essential. Conflicts do not exist in isolation. They influence migration flows, commodity prices, technological development, and geopolitical alignments. What happens between the United States, Israel, and Iran does not stay confined to one region. It becomes part of a larger global narrative about power in the 21st century. We are living in a time where alliances shift rapidly, technology changes warfare, and nuclear proliferation remains a persistent concern. The confrontation we see today is the result of decades of accumulated distrust and strategic calculation. Whether it ends in negotiation or deeper conflict depends on choices made in moments of pressure. As we conclude this deep dive, remember that history is not predetermined. Leaders can choose escalation or restraint. Nations can prioritize diplomacy or dominance. The coming months and years will reveal which path is taken. And here on QA Documentary, we will continue to analyze every development with clarity and depth. If you found this breakdown insightful and want more high-quality geopolitical documentaries that go beyond headlines, make sure to subscribe to KIYO Documentary. Like this video and share it with others who want to understand the forces shaping our world. Because in times of global uncertainty, understanding is power, and the more informed we are, the better prepared we are for whatever comes next. This is QA Documentary, and we'll see you in the next deep dive.